Since this is your first video lecture, I thought I would kind of give a brief explanation of what these lectures do and the purpose behind them. So when I cover readings from the book, I'm not going to cover everything. I'm not going to cover all of the material that the chapters cover. So you want to make sure that you're still reading, that you're still looking critically at whatever reading assignment I'm giving you. But hopefully these videos will help to really pinpoint some of the main ideas, um, as well as give a different perspective on it. So the information that I give in these videos hopefully will just be a supplement to the book. I'm not just going to be repeating the exact same information. Hopefully it'll be a little more understandable once you read the text and then watch the video. So again, make sure that you watch the video, or excuse me, read the book first, then watch the video, so that what I'm telling you, you already have an idea of the foundational information, and what I tell you is just adding on to that and hopefully clarifying things and really solidifying them for you. Also, I know that this class is very much reading intensive, so I use the videos to break that up a little bit. So this first video is on chapter 12, which is all about reading strategies, and I'm starting with this at the beginning of the quarter, even though it's toward the end of the book, uh, because you're going to be reading this quarter, and I want you to know and understand how to best view the readings that you're going to be working with throughout the quarter. I figure leaving that till the end's not in your best interest, so it seems kind of out of whack that we're starting with chapter 12 and 13, but there is method behind my madness. There might be more madness, but that's okay. Uh, so, why do you need to read critically? What is the purpose behind that? And really, it's just to help you do more than just read. Anybody can sit down and read. I sit down and read books like, Harry Potter and The Hunger Games and things like that, and I'm not necessarily reading them critically. I'm reading to enjoy them. It's hard for me to turn off my analytical mind with them, so I do tend to analyze naturally anyway, but that's what I've been, trained to do through school and through teaching. But there's nothing wrong with just sitting down and simply reading something just for the sheer enjoyment of reading. However, in this class, you need to put those readings to work for you. So you need to be able to read them and enjoy them, hopefully. I hope I'm not going to assign anything that you absolutely detest. You're going to have choice in what you read. But you can't just read it for pleasure. Otherwise, you're not going to get anything out of it. So you need to read critically so that you can work with that information in your assignments, and so that you can start to apply those writing examples to your own writing. So do not be a passive reader in this course. You have to read these readings critically. Even just the chapters, you need to read critically. What do you need to get out of it? What does this stuff mean? How does it all work together to create better writing? Um, so all of that is why you need to read critically. Don't be lazy about it, because the more work you put into your reading, the more you're going to get out of a reading. Also, reading critically relates to analysis, and analysis is when you look at any kind of text, such as a picture or a TV commercial, but mostly in this class, we're just going to be reading written texts, of course. So when you analyze a written text, you're looking at all the different pieces within that text and how they work together to create an effective essay. So that's what analysis is. It's just breaking down the parts of a writing to see how they all work together effectively. And once you start to analyze the examples and seeing how effective the writers are in their writing, you can then do the same thing in your own writing, which is really the point of reading. People who read tend to write well. So the more you read, the better you'll be able to write. And again, you can't just passively read these things and expect yourself to improve in your own writing. So analyze them, look at the pieces, and the pieces are things that we're going to talk about in just a moment. So if you're like, I don't know what to analyze, well, there's a million things you could analyze, and we're going to cover some of them. So again, reading critically and analyzing are very much related. So let's move on to the strategies that the textbook covers. Annotating is probably one of my favorite means of reading critically, and they have a good example in the textbook on page 523. And annotating is essentially just taking notes in the columns. And what I really like that the textbook says is that you can read a reading multiple times and annotate each time, and your annotations are going to change. The focus on what you're pulling out of the text is going to change. So annotating just create some notes in the margins of whatever it is that you're reading. And again, peruse through the example. This textbook is full of example essays, and it highlights a lot of things, and it looks kind of messy on the surface, and I'm not expecting you to read every example, but at least look at them. Peruse what the textbook is trying to teach you through that example. So take a look at the annotation example, working with Martin Luther King Jr.'s essay, and take a look at what those annotations are. Then once you have annotations, you can take inventory of annotations. So you're simply analyzing what it was that you pulled out of it, and hopefully you've read it more than once so that you have different layers of annotations to take inventory of. And then you can see patterns that you pulled out and things like that. You can outline a reading. You can either do it based on the annotations that you took, or you can simply just go through it and analyze, paragraph by paragraph. So outlining it will help you comprehend it quite a bit better. You can paraphrase or summarize if you don't know the difference. Paraphrasing tends to be a more line by line rewording of a text. So say you want to paraphrase a sentence. Your paraphrase is going to be about a sentence long. It's going to match whatever it is that you're paraphrasing. A summary, on the other hand, is a much broader rewording. So you can summarize an entire book into a couple sentences. You can just talk about the main idea, again, of that book. Whereas paraphrase, if you tried to paraphrase a book, your paraphrase would be about as long as a book. So if it's something very short that you want to reword, paraphrase might be a better option. If you want to summarize something longer and just give a general gist, a summary would be more appropriate. And it just depends on your purpose and what you're trying to do. So paraphrasing and summarizing a work. If you can't summarize a reading after you've read it, you need to read it again. That's very basic. And you do have to analyze in order to do that. You have to understand what is most important and then the supporting points that the reading is trying to make. Similar to this is synthesis. Synthesis is a skill that is very complicated but very high-level thinking. So synthesis is when you take multiple readings and use their perspective to make one point. So be sure to look at the examples on synthesis in the textbook, because it's, again, a very, very elevated form of thinking and writing. You're using multiple sources to make one point. Even though they all may have a different perspective on that point, using them together instead of isolation is what makes that so complex and so good. You can give contextual background. So the historical background, in this chapter they use, again, Martin Luther King Jr.'s essay. And of course, the background to that piece is extremely important during the civil rights movement. So I'm one of those that believes that any work cannot be separated from the time in which it was written. When I analyze literature and things like that, I always look to the context that it came from. So even if you're just reading an essay on cell phones, well, when was it written? Was it written at the very beginning of the cell phone, revolution, or is it written more current? Because that's going to have a huge effect on how that reading is written. You can also look for figurative language. Hopefully you've heard of metaphors, similes, and symbols. Metaphors are just a direct comparison. My love is a rose. A simile uses like or as. My love is like a rose. And then a symbol, of course, is when you have an object standing for either another object or an idea. And so you can look for things like that, and you might think, oh, well, those are only in, literary things, short stories, poems, things like that. And yeah, for the most part, that's true. But really good writers of nonfiction, so just essays like you're going to read in this course, also pull in figurative language. So if you can pull those out, that's really good, because they're using more artistry than you might be used to in that writing, and it makes it that much better. You can Look for patterns of opposition, how things are contradicting each other, not in a bad way, but just the opposition within a reading. You can reflect on how a reading changes and challenges your beliefs and values. And with this one, I really, really suggest and encourage you to not let this be the focus of your critical reading, because to me, it's all based on opinion and a reaction and a personal response, which I want you to actually get away from, as I've already said. Uh, but I also want to challenge you to be challenged. It's okay if you read a work and go, oh, I always thought the opposite. Okay, I can change my way of thinking. Be flexible in your thinking. Allow multiple perspectives to change your mind. It's okay to do that. You don't need to just completely write off and disregard something that contradicts with what you think and what you've experienced. Have perspective. Don't be black and white, be gray. Allow for um, complexity in your thinking and be able to see different facets of the same issue. When you read something, you need to evaluate it. Is the argument within it appropriate? Is it believable? Is it consistent and complete? How does the author develop that argument? How do they support it? Um, what is the logic behind it? Is it good? Uh, let's see here. Emotional trickery. Are they just trying to manipulate you? Is the writer using logical fallacies in some way? Are they trying to again, just kind of trick you into thinking something? Look for things like that. Loaded statements. I was reading a post yesterday that I read on Facebook about something I was interested in, and as I'm reading it, I'm going, I think you're full of poo. This is totally ridiculous. And then I read some of the comments at the bottom because it was a blog, and I was definitely not the only person who thought that. So it's totally okay to go, huh, I think you're trying to manipulate me in this way. And then lastly, think about the writer's credibility. Are they believable? Are they presenting themselves professionally? Is there anything about how they present themselves that make you wonder about the validity of their writing? Think about all of that. And the one main thing I want to point out with all of these strategies, I think they're all excellent and all things that you need to work on progressively. You can't work on them all at the same time. So pick one, two, or three, that you can work on with each reading. And then as you move through the quarter, change it up. But I want you to understand how all of this information doesn't just affect your reading, it affects your writing as well. So, for example, when you paraphrase or summarize a reading, how can you put a summary in your paper and write it effectively? How can you not just mentally synthesize sources that you read or readings that you use in this course, but how can you incorporate that into your own writing? What if you are writing on a discussion board and you think that the reading that you had read that week is very much similar to a reading you read 2 weeks ago? Use them together. Think about, let's see here, how you can use figurative language in your own writing. Think about the oppositions you can put in. Think about your credibility as a writer. So don't think that this is just a one-sided thing. When I teach most of this material, I teach it in terms of writing, not as reading. But this is an excellent way to get you thinking. Look for these skills in the writing that you're reading. And then once you evaluate it and see how effective it is, you can apply that in your own writing. Because really, I can't stress enough how important reading is to writing. If you don't write well, more than likely you don't read a whole lot. Maybe not, I don't know. But I know from personal experience, when I read, I can see examples and go, oh, I can do that in your own writing. And there's no reason you can't do that too. It's a very easy way to help yourself improve. So as you go through the quarter, use these strategies. Always try to be a critical reader and use them to help your writing. Be a good reader so that you can be a better writer. If you have any questions about any of this information, let me know. And hopefully you will see both sides improve.